What's up, everyone? So we finally got the next gen console update for ACC. So Series X, Series S, and PS5. We were able to download this as an update. Um, but like all things console ACC, we really didn't get much information ahead of time on what would be in here besides 4K, 60 FPS, 30 cars on track, and private lobbies. So I kind of did some digging around, exploring, and wanted to show you guys, a few of the other things that were added in here that you may not have noticed otherwise. So the first thing, this is one of the biggest changes for me, in my opinion, is so degree of rotation for steer lock on cars is now automatically changed between cars. Before you had to make different presets for all the different um, degree of rotation settings for each car, but now you just set it to the max. My wheel supports 1080 degrees, so it has that as an option. Yours may say 900, 720, 540, depending on which wheel you use. I didn't have to change my force feedback settings much. I increased the gain only by 5%. I'm on a Thrustmaster TS XW. Depending on what wheel you have, you may want to play around with these settings and see how you think the force feedback feels. To me, the force feedback feels very similar, but a little smooth, less peaky, less spiky, if that makes any sense. Another thing, if we go over to our driver menu and you go to customize, the full color spectrum is back. When the game first came out, we had it, and then after one of the updates, it went away and you couldn't choose between any color. But as you can see here, we can go through all the color choices. Works for the helmet and works for the driver suit as well. So glad to have that back, because you gotta make sure your race suit matches your livery. All right, so if we back out of here and we go over to the car liveries, nothing new feature-wise is here, but as you can see, I can change the color of an existing design I have and save it, and it actually saves the change without having to save it as a new one. You can see I can go back to it and it saved the green I just changed it to. So I'll go in and change it back to the red. Just hit save, don't have to save it as new, and it saves it. Another new thing presentation wise is when you select a track in single player, it shows a little video going through the track. I believe before it was just one static image. But yeah, let's go ahead and get in a practice session here, and I'll show you some of the new camera view options. This is probably, for me, the biggest game changer, I guess I would say, from this update. So we have view settings in the pause menu now, and in here you can change your sitting position, so you can change the height, and you can stick your head out of the roof if you want. You can change your lateral position, kind of center you in the car. You can change the distance, so think of this like a seat slider. Here you can change your field of view finally. This is big, especially if you sit closer to your monitor. Then you can change the pitch, so whether you're kind of angled up or angled down. So let's go out on track real quick and I will show you some of the other camera features we have. It's a lot easier to kind of show what they do while we're driving. But yeah, like I said, force feedback feels, for the most part, similar. I just think the weight builds up smoother, if that makes sense. Going through hairpins, things like that, like it just feels like there's the going from light force feedback to heavy force feedback just feels more gradual for me. Alright, so I'm going to pause here, and in view settings, so as long as we're in the cockpit view, we have a few options here. So I can change it from where you can see the driver's hands and the wheel, to just seeing the wheel, so no hands in the way. I can also change it to locked wheel, where I can turn my steering wheel and the wheel in the cockpit view stays the same. Just kind of awkward, but you know, to each their own. And the last one we have is to hide both the hands and wheel. So, you know, all you see is the one you're using. And that's what I would prefer. Now, if you adjust your view to where you can't see the dash in the car, you can actually toggle this option on, and then it overlays the dash on your HUD. Obviously in this view I don't really need it, but if you're sitting way closer to the dash or in other views, this is a nice option to have, so you still get this info. But we're going to turn that off. Now we have lock to horizon. Now think of this setting as essentially separating the driver from the car, almost like he's suspended in air within the car. So what you're going to see is the movement of the car is much more obvious and exaggerated, while the camera itself is staying still. This is turned on max is pretty disorienting to me, so I found having it set around 15 was enough, where you know, when you're going over small bumps, it doesn't really affect your camera too much. But at the same time, you know, you still feel like you're part of the car. You're, you know, seated in the car. So as you can see, you know, you can still tell the car's bouncing, but it's not exaggerated. So dash cam factor, the only thing that really does is vibrate the screen. I really don't see a purpose in using that. It was more distracting than anything. Now look with wheel, this one's kind of self-explanatory, but basically the driver is going to look into the turn as you turn the wheel. The harder you turn the wheel, the more the driver is gonna look. Now I play on a 55-inch TV and sit pretty close, so I already kind of naturally look into the turn, and the display is wide enough where, you know, I have to do that basically. If you're playing on a smaller monitor, maybe this would be more useful. It's not horribly distracting for me too much, except for like in the hairpins it can be kind of off-putting. So I think if I was to use this, I'd do it on a more subtle setting, like maybe 20. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I mean, I could drive with this. It's not distracting really. Can't really tell if it's doing too much, but just kind of helps you focus on the apex a little better. And one awesome thing about these view settings is, see, I can change view here, and I have independent settings for each view. So, you know, cockpit view, dash view, I can have separate settings for it. And it's also works like this between cars, so I can have different settings for each view for each car. So this really lets you dial in perfect viewing position, you know, based on how you're sitting. And that's why, in my opinion, I think this is the biggest improvement in the update. And the last major thing we got is the BMW M4 GT3. Surprised this came before 1.8. It wasn't introduced in PC until 1.8. But yeah, it is the M4 GTR in all of its pig-nosed glory. Give you a little look around here. And then we can zoom in on this monstrosity. Alright, out on the track at Paul Ricard. The M4 likes to turn into a Lamborghini when you're in the garage, so that's fun. But yeah, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a lap around Paul Ricard and talk about the visuals, and also show you just the M4 in action. So I'm going to let the car do the talking for the next little bit until we get onto the straightaway, and then I'll give my thoughts on some of the visual issues with this update. But until then, enjoy the M4 GT3. Alright, so my issues with the visuals in this game, you can see it right now. The texture pop-in is pretty horrendous, to be honest. I don't know if it was like this on Series X before. I have been on Series X for a while. You know, it still runs the backward compatible Xbox One version of the game before this update. And I don't remember seeing this much pop in. The shadows right there. Again, I could just be, you know, noticing it because I'm, you know, looking for differences in this update, but I really just don't remember seeing it to that degree before. And none of the visuals really look that much better that I can notice compared to the previous version of the game. If you're jumping from Xbox One to Series X or Series S, you're 100% going to notice everything, especially the frame rate jump. But yeah, I'll probably do a video on servers in a little bit. I want to let them kind of stabilize first. You know, video games these days, servers seem to you know, not launch very stable. So private servers, they technically work. Me and my brother tested one, but there was a lot of texture issues with our cars on each other's screens where there was a lot of flickering. So, but yeah, so that's everything in the update so far. If anything major happens with the servers, I know a couple leagues I'm in are going to get their servers set up, hopefully for a race this weekend. I don't know, maybe we'll see a hot fix or a patch. 505 Games does have a bug submission form. So for those of you who are having any issues, I know it sounds like PlayStation may be having more issues than Xbox is. And as well as those, looks like the Thrustmaster TMX might be having issues with force feedback dropping out. But yeah, other than that, that's all I have for the update today. Like I said, anything changes, we get any hot fixes, I'll, you know, do an update. And once the 1.8 version update comes out, we don't really know the timeline of that, but once that comes out, I'll probably do a video on that showcasing, you know, some of the physics changes and things like that. So, but yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you next time.